I was going to ask you, what is the way back? How do they actually solve this and recoup? I think the Ipsos poll had Labour 26 points ahead.
Yeah, and I think the sort of the difference between Sunak and Starmer personally from the Ipsos poll show that actually there isn't a huge amount of difference. I mean, 49%, 42% is not a huge difference. What we do see, however, is that overall the government sort of seem to be, very negative favour with the public. I think that poll is quite it sort of shows the way that the people sort of generally feel pretty negative towards the government as a whole, rather than as Sunak and Starmer personally.
Yeah. OK, well, we've been seeing, in terms of Prime Minister's questions, with the attack lines from Keir Starmer, an accomplished lawyer, and he's been quite forensic in sort of cross-examination, but going very much with the class issues. And that's going back to the old days, if you like, of trying to get clear blue water between the two parties. Has that worked, do you think?
I don't think it has. I think that Starmer has been sort of playing it pretty safe this year overall. I think it's sort of looking at the next election, it really is Starmer's to lose. I think we know that Labour is going to probably win the next election. If it's a minority government or sort of a coalition or supply and command sort of situation going on, we know that the Tories, sort of have a very negative favour in the next election. But Starmer this year has sort of played it very safe. And I think that we sort of did have maybe an alternative universe where we had Starmer actually arguing that the tax burden was too high, and the Conservatives, successively increasing taxes.
The world turned upside down.
It really was. And for somebody like me that believes in free markets, it was bizarre to see Starmer arguing for lower taxation and seeing the Conservatives increase it.
OK, well, here's a question. So is he and a resurgent Labour actually the thing that Sunak should worry about? Or is it actually that the Tory party fracturing, that there is, a populist there called Nigel Farage out in the political margins, a GBNews presenter, we should add, and lots of people are saying actually that's where the Tories may lose more political ground, is with people leaving the party and going to those margins?
I think it's the latter rather than the former. I think that people like Nigel Farage because he's, first of all, an excellent communicator, and secondly, he represents people in the party that actually are Conservative. And that's why I'm just sort of thinking about young Conservatives. We sort of see...
What are we? What do we stand for?
The party doesn't stand for anything. We've had 5 different prime ministers over the course of the last 12 years, all of whom have had different visions for the country. Some of whom are Remainers, some of whom are Brexiteers, and a lot of them actually had no vision for the country. Now, I will sort of say I think that Liz Truss did have that vision, but she executed it terribly.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was the right one, but it was executed terribly. And it meant that actually this sort of idea behind free markets, this idea that the government does, more bad things than good, this idea that the tax burden is too high, that the government is crushing small businesses, crushing hard-working people.
Yeah, but the critics, of course, saying, well, that's all well and good, but she failed to actually complete the virtuous circle as Thatcher did by getting your own house in order before you go down that road.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think that when we're thinking about the mini-budget, for example, people talk about the mini-budget as this bombshell. It really was not that radical. It was essentially a reversal of the increases in taxes that we saw in April. So I don't think that it was that radical, but it was the fact that it was going to be funded through borrowing and it was not going to be funded through cuts in spending. And we sort of saw, again, sort of thinking about Prime Minister's questions, Liz Truss unequivocally promised not to cut spending, and that's really where the problem lies. We've got a huge, disastrous sort of mismanagement of public spending, and our taxpayer money, we're sort of spending extortionate amounts that is going to the government, and it's being mismanaged terribly.